All right, welcome Jonesboro Rotarians. I'm going to go ahead and get the meeting started a little bit early today because you're going to love our program today. And to add a little more time, I'm going to forego announcements and bragging bucks. Just keep that till the next meeting if you can, unless somebody's got something pressing you need to talk about.
Well, we better talk about backpacks.
Okay.
Because I announced the last time that we were going to need everybody like we had when we were there last month. But they've already packed up all the summer bags they need, so we're going to be in the school year next Thursday. So we only need 500. So I'll put out a note, but if we get 8 to 10, that'll be fine.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. I bought us a new podium that I've donated to the club. So, so that's my Rotary contribution. Okay, so moving on to the program. It's my honor today to introduce Ray Williams. Ray is writing a book, and when it's finished, you'll just have to read his book to get all the details. But basically, Ray is British. He grew up in London, just outside of London. His family lived like across the street from Heathrow Airport, right. I think it was. But when Ray was a teenager, he loved music, just like most of us did when we were teenagers, or you still do. And there was a weekly TV music show in London called Ready, Steady, Go. Is that correct? And Ray was a big fan, and he lived close enough where he could go actually to the studio where they showed that and watch bands play and that kind of thing. And so the lady who was the director of that had seen Ray coming in, coming out, and she actually offered Ray a job as an intern to work for her. So that's how Ray started in the music business. And back in the day, he was friends with the Beatles, especially John Lennon, Jimi Hendrix. He became a press agent. He toured with Sonny and Cher, Cream, Eric Clapton, The Kinks. It's just amazing to, anytime I can get Ray settled down, I love to just ask him a question and then just sit back and listen. So, without further ado, I do have some posters. If anyone would like an autographed poster, Ray is, after the meeting, Ray will be glad to sign one for you. And like I say, he's working on a book, and whenever it comes out, it's going to be a great read. But where he really raised fame is he discovered Elton John. He worked with Liberty Records in London. I don't know if any of you saw the movie Rocket Man. Ray's character is in Rocket Man. Ray put an ad in the newspaper looking for musical talent. Send your resume into Liberty Records, and Ray was the point of contact. And Elton John came to see him, but that wasn't his name at that time. It was Reggie Dwight. And so Elton, Ray was impressed with Elton, but Elton told him he wrote music, he sang, but he just wasn't good at lyrics, coming up with lyrics. Ray had gotten a letter from Bernie Taupin, and he basically said, I'm a poet, I'm not musical, but I think some of my poems could be fit to music. And so Ray pulled out that letter and got Bernie and Elton together, and the rest is history. So now I'm going to turn it over to Ray Williams.
He was very good. Right. Anyway, thank you very much, David, for inviting me. Congratulations.
We're glad to have you.
On your presidency for the Rotary Club. And thank you, everybody, for doing what you do. I think it's fantastic. I've lived here now for nearly 3 years. And I've learned what a great place it is, how lovely the people are, and it's very much my home. So thank you very much for making me feel so welcome. I know a lot of you here, but it's a great place. And thank you, David. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, my local brewery here. And thank you all. Anyway, yeah, I was 13 when I really started to follow local bands. And there was a hairdresser. I started going to a hairdresser so I could get a DA. Do you know what a DA is? Duck's arse. Yeah. And it was very trendy in those days. And the guy cutting my hair was a guy called Derek Burgess. And his uncle was John Burgess, who worked for EMI, and he worked with George Martin, you know, some of these legendary producers. And he started talking to me about this band called Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers. And I started following Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers, and one day the TV show came down and had him on the show, and the presenter invited me to be the intern, exactly as you said. Mm-hmm. But then one day they said, after I've been there a number of times, we went to Switzerland with the Rolling Stones, the first time they ever left England to do a show. And I was lucky enough to be there. They had the Beatles on, and that was an amazing day. But it was the biggest show in England. You'd have Bobby Darin, you'd have the Byrds, you'd have anybody that was in England. And one day she said to me, I'm going to get you a proper job. Would you be a presenter? A young presenter talking to the new talent. I said, well, I can't talk. I'm shy. And I am. I still am. I was very, very shy. And I said, I can't do that. I can't string 2 sentences together. So she said, well, I've got an idea. There's somebody I want you to meet. And he's starting new business. He's done very well. Would you meet him? His name's Brian Somerville. And Brian was the Beatles publicity manager. So I got an interview with Brian, and I got the job as his assistant. And the first 3 artists I was assigned to were Sonny and Cher, Tommy Rowe, who came from Atlanta, a singer with lots of hits, and the Kinks. So I became very, very lucky. I was so lucky, really. From that day to this, I've really had a front row seat watching music history. And it's just been absolutely amazing. And these sort of bumping into this person or that person has led me to some amazing things. None less than I got invited to, but anyway, I did that. I worked for Brian Somerville, and then I worked with him for a bit. And then Tommy Rowe from Atlanta, he and his manager, Bill Lowry, invited me to work for them in Atlanta, in Georgia. So I'm still a teenager. That was quite amazing. So I started working with Tommy, Billy Joe Royal. I don't really know any of these people.
Yeah.
Atlanta Rhythm Section, the Tams.
Know them all.
And yeah, just Joe South, great songwriters. And that's where I really learned about songs and learning to appreciate songs. And also having really an eclectic taste, which I think is very important. I think you like all music to appreciate music. Mm-hmm. And so they taught me about writing songs and stuff like that. I don't write, I don't play anything, but I had a good ear. And then I came back to England to work for them in England. And really, I was, I got a bit bored with it because it became too mechanical. So I started a press company because I had the background with Brian Somerville in the working in press and doing some amazing things. And one of my first bands was Cream, which is Eric Clapton and Ginger Baker, and that sort of thing. And we did the Hollies, we did so many bands, it was ridiculous. So from that, I started to cut my feet and my teeth. I cut my feet playing soccer. And ended up working for all sorts of people. And then I got a phone call from NEMS, from a guy called Peter Brown, who was Brian Epstein's assistant. And he said, there's a company coming to England called Liberty Records. They're going to open an office. And they're looking for an A&R man. Now, if you don't know what an A&R man, it means artist and repertoire. And the job is to find talent, to get it recorded and develop it, and to find songwriters. So George Martin was my idol as a record producer. He could play music, he could arrange music, he knew what he was doing. I couldn't play music, I couldn't write music, and I didn't know what I was doing. Anyway, I applied for this job, and I got it. And I became head of A&R for Liberty Records in England and Europe. And I'm still 19. It was great. Yeah, I left school at 15. And I became an office boy for Alitalia Airlines and started doing the Ready, Steady, Go alongside that. Left that, and then the rest of the story as I've told it. Anyway, so we ended up wondering, what the hell do I do now? I've got this job. This great record label, Liberty. Liberty had the Chipmunks, right? Very big. They had Bobby V, Dale Shannon. They had Blue Note Jazz Records. They were an imperial label. They had a lot of great music. And here I was now, the head of A&R for this wonderful company owned by Al Bennett. Al's the guy, if you remember the Chipmunks, you got Alvin, and he got named after Al. Anyway, I get appointed A&R, and I think, what am I going to do? We need talent. So I created an ad, which is David mentioned, and the ad I put in, I was only allowed a quarter page, and I put an ad in the New Musical Express, which is quite a big, well, it was a big, that and the Melody Maker were the two biggest music papers. And so I put this ad in, and what was to follow, I couldn't believe. I had thousands and thousands of letters. We didn't have emails or anything like that in those days. They were letters and phone calls.
Ray, was no one else putting ads in the newspaper but you?
Not for this.
Okay.
It was like looking for talent. And if you think about the 60s, there was a lot of talent around. The influence of the Beatles and all the bands, the Beach Boys, there was so much talent, but nowhere to go. So my ad got enormous responses, and as I was young and enthusiastic, I opened every letter. I answered everybody. I spoke to everybody. And the first person I signed was Jeff Lynne and his band, the Idle Reds. Now, if you don't know Jeff Lynne, he has a band called the Electric Light Orchestra, ELO.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was the first band I signed. So that's where I started my traction. I ended up managing Jeff for 3 albums and 5 singles and got him going, which was really good. And then I signed a chap called Mike Batt, who's massive in Europe as a writer and has a big product called the Wombles. I mean, it won't mean anything here, I know that. But I signed the Bonzo Dog Doodah band, who were produced by Gus Dudgeon and Paul McCartney. And they had a #1 hit all over the world called I'm the Urban Spaceman. Do you remember that? I'd sing it, but I'll get David to sing it like. So, anyway, it was a success. Then there was a band called Family, but there was a lot of people, and I started to work with people like Bobby V and Dale Shannon They were great people, and I loved working with them. And eventually, one of these guys that came in was Reg Dwight. And he said, I'm in this band called Bluesology. I'm a bit, I don't know what to do. I said, well, come in and see me. So he came in to see me. In the film Rocket Man, who's seen Rocket Man, anybody? Yeah? There's a scene, it's totally wrong, it's out of context. It has me working in somebody's office, but it was my office at Liberty Records, it wasn't Dick James. And I'm sitting at the table with my feet up on the table, and this guy walks in, and I say, what's your name then? With my feet up on the table. And you see Elton come in, and he says, Elton. And he looks at the picture of John Lennon and says, Elton John. Well, that's not true at all. He got the name from two members of Bluesology, Elton Dean, and John came from Long John Baldry, who was like the lead singer. That became Elton John. So he said, I've got this name, Elton John, and I can't write songs, but I said, look, go on the piano and just play it. Because I'd seen him in Bluesology. I said, just go and play the piano. So he played about 3 or 4 songs. One was famously He'll Have to Go by Jim Reeves. Do you remember that song?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he sang a couple of other songs that I can't remember really. There was an Al Jolson song he sang for a laugh. And then there was, anyway, I said, right, you're an amazing piano player. You had a great voice. I said, let's go make some demos. So I managed to get, I think, £25 as a budget for 4 hours of studio time at a place called Regent Sound in Tin Pan Alley in London, which is Denmark Street. And we made these demos. I bought these demos back, played them to my boss, Bob Reisdorf and Alan Keen. They said, we don't see it, we don't like it. So I said, okay. So what I did, I said to Elton, I've got 2 other people I've been helping. I hired them a piano in the house I was living in. I want you to meet them. And they were, all of us were friends with people like Graham Nash from the Hollies, from the work before. And I introduced them to that. And then I got this letter from Bernie Taupin. And he sent about 14 lyrics. And they were really out there. And I thought, these are pretty good. So I wrote back to Bernie and I said, come down and see me. I'll see what I can do. And then I thought, well, there's Elton. He can't write lyrics. Bernie can't write. And I'll put them together. And that's what I did. And I put them together. So that was the beginning of an amazing story. I kept in touch with them all the time. And then one day Elton asked me to manage him. And I became his manager. That's a longer story. You can read about that in my book. I'm not sure what it's going to be called. But anyway, I became the manager, and then we started to get him with a live band, Nigel and Dee, and we started doing a lot of TV shows in Europe and promoting the band in the UK. But it got to the point where we needed to come to America. And I know we've only got a little bit of time. The long story short is that I arranged for a gig in the Troubadour through a big company over here called Chartwell Artists. A guy called Jerry Perenchia owned that. And they owned quite a lot of people. And the first guy rang me up from his office, offered me $50 to play at the bottom end in New York. I said, well, that's not really enough. We've got to come to America. And then I went to Dick James, and we asked him for a budget to help us. He said, yeah, okay, we'll do that. And then another agent called Jerry Heller rang me up I said, "You work for Jerry Prancher?" He said, "I've got a gig at the Troubadour in LA. They'll pay you $150. I said, "You've got to be joking." And we ended up getting it up to $240. And then we got the money from Dick, and we had a deal with Uni Records, which was a new label then. It's of course now called Universal. And they had 2 or 3 acts. They had Neil Diamond, and they had God, I'm trying to think who they had. Bloody hell, I can't think of them. Anyway, they had a lot of artists, and this was their new British artist. And
What year was this, Ray?
this particular year is now 1970.
Okay.
So we're going to the Troubadour, August 25th. You know, so it's another anniversary this month. Amazing. And goodness me, 50, it's more than that, isn't it? 53. Bloody hell. Anyway, off we went to the Troubadour, and we were greeted by a London bus, which they thought was great. We hated it because to travel 13 hours and then get on a London bus. And they drove on the Sunset down to Hollywood, and we stayed there, and then our journey started to open at the Troubadour with another singer called David Ackles. David Ackles was meant to be the star, but at the rehearsal they saw that they had to turn it around, because David Ackles was just a guitar, and David Ackles. And Elton had himself, he had Nigel and Dee, drum and bass player. And we opened up, and it was just phenomenal. Everybody, every night, just came in. The Beach Boys, the Eagles, everybody came. We got Neil Diamond to open up the show to introduce people. And that was the beginning of an amazing career. And I drew out a few figures here. I was at Glastonbury the other week. It was Elton's last show in England.
Yeah.
But in Forbes will tell you that his show is the world's biggest grossing show ever in history, which is fantastic. He made, I think, nearly $1 billion, which is amazing. So when the Yellow Brick Road started in 2018, that's 5 years, we had COVID. He did 278 shows, 5.3 million tickets, and the gross salary just under $1 billion. And it's bigger than Ed Sheeran, U2, Guns N' Roses, Coldplay, Rolling Stones, etc., etc. And his earnings from 1986 is 1.863 billion, and Billboard, he's the biggest artist as far as Billboard is concerned, and he's sold about 300 million albums. Downloads are billions. So it's very interesting to have been involved with him, and you know, fortunate enough to be at Dodger Stadium for his last show in November. I've obviously done tons of things since then, none less than I had a band called Steelers Wheel, Jerry Rafferty, so that was another, you know, pretty big success. Stuck in the Middle with you, yeah. Baker Street, all those. And then I had a band called the Blues Band, which was really a fun thing that I was involved with for 5 years. And then I got into music supervision for films. And I did about 75 of those, including, the biggest one would have been The Last Emperor, which I think we won 8 Academy Awards. It was pretty big. And so...
And you produced the music
I was the,
for
yeah,
Last Emperor, correct?
I was the executive music producer for that. And we won the Oscar for the music, of course. And then won various other things with different films. And then that was it. I got really it took a long time, a big chunk of my life working on films. It was fantastic because you never knew what the history of the film was going to be. You went to a lot of great places. Working with some amazing people like the master musicians of Jajuka in Morocco in the Atlas Mountains. And yeah, so I've been very, very lucky. I'm very lucky to live here. And
What brought you here?
everybody else there.
Yeah.
I'll try and make it quick. I came through Raleigh. I was coming back from New York to Atlanta, and the plane was like a hopper. So I went New York, Atlanta, the old Raleigh airport, long time ago, 45 years ago, something like that. And I got stuck in because there was an engine failure on one of the engines. So I got here and I thought, everybody's so nice. Of course, it was a bit different then. You all wore suits.
Yeah, right.
You all wore suits with helmet, sort of suitcases. And it's not what you call them, briefcases, but everybody was so friendly and nice. And it always left a little memory in my head. And after I've been working on all these films, I decided to give that up. And I wanted to do something different. So my friend Bill Lowry, I'd helped him sell his company to Sony. That was the company I came to, I mentioned earlier, Joe South, Atlanta Rhythm Section. I'd helped him sell that to Sony Music, and he'd passed on, and his son wanted some help, and they owned a studio called Southern Tracks. Bruce Springsteen, Pearl Jam used to do all their, lots of people, and he wanted help to really close it down really, and so he offered me a 3-year contract. So I didn't want to live in Atlanta, and a golf buddy of mine said, well, I live in Chapel Hill. Sorry, it's getting a bit long. I live in Chapel Hill. I said, oh, that's near Raleigh. Yeah, oh, I'll come and have a look. So I came over, and he and his wife were so great. They showed me all these houses, and I ended up coming here, bought a house, and then commuted to Atlanta. And then I sold that house 3 years ago, and then I bought a house here, about 3.5 years ago. And I bought a house here, and I bought Mary Lynn's house. And it's just perfect. And that's my brief story. Anyway, so now I'm trying to spend time with, Chad and I, my buddy over here. He and I.
Don't forget to tell them.
That's what I'm talking about right now.
Wrecking the motorcycle.
We were having a drink one night at Mike's place when I first got here, and we started talking about Pink Floyd. And so Chad and I were inspired to try and get this mural up here, and that's what we did. And with the help of many of you, we were able to do it very fast. It was fantastic. So I've done odd things like that, and I'm working on a charity called the Listen campaign, which is a global event, which has got Samuel L. Jackson, Natalie Portman are involved. And the guy organising that is the same guy that did the Nelson Mandela concerts and the Wall, the Wall concert in Berlin. Anyway, so I was working on that yesterday, and then I'm trying to write my book. Anyway, that's what I'm doing.
How about
Anyway.
Sonny and Cher? Did you work?
Oh, I did. Sorry, I glossed over that. So they became really great friends. And when I came over to America before album, I stayed with them. Then they bought Encino. They bought a house in Encino. So I stayed with them there. And I had, well, that period of time I stayed with them, I went to the people that were managing them, who were managing Buffalo Springfield. So I went to all those recording sessions at Buffalo Springfield, right at the beginning. I mean, I was blessed. I met some amazing people. Mamas and papas. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Ray owns a company now called Crumbs Music. Office is in Raleigh, and you might briefly tell us what Crumbs does?
Well, yeah, I mean, it really was to license music online, but so many things have changed now, and I'm trying to change that directly by working with other companies, because I want to write my book. I mean, that is really but I do have some amazing songs that, you know, trying to help. We've tried to help local songwriters here. We've had, you know, the nights where we get, say, 9 songwriters together and they tell their stories. We've done it at the Camelback, and we've done it with Jeff over the road, and they've been successful, haven't they, mate? Really good. So I want to do that again. This year's been wiped out really with a lot of things I've had to do, and but we'll do it again next year.
What's AI gonna do to your job?
Sorry?
What's the AI gonna do to you?
It's probably going to help me and make me more intelligent. Yeah.
Well, Ray,
Anyway,
thank you so much.
thank you.
And we have, if anybody wants an autograph, Ray will be glad to hang around for a few minutes. Great program, Ray.
Thank
We
you.
might have to have him back for
Oh,
a
gosh,
part 2
yeah.
and a part 3.
There's a lot more to this
Yeah.
story.
But
Anyway, thank you very much.
Ray has just some amazing stories. Like when he mentioned he was in the studio when Buffalo Springfield was recording their first album, and the song "For What It's Worth" is, I would say, it's one of my top 5 favorites of all time. And just to think he was in the studio when they were doing it, so
Yeah, it was
just
amazing.
some amazing stories. But Ray is also a supporter of Jonesboro Rotary. He buys pots of gold tickets, and he was our grand prize $1,000
I
winner.
apologize.
We appreciate it. Anyway, thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you.
And if anybody wants to speak to him or get an autograph, just come on up.
Thank you.
Oh, let's, Larry, would you lead us in the 4-way test and the pledge, please? Almost forgot.
Four-way test is the things we think, say, and do. First, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.